Hello, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm an assistant youth and teen librarian here at Fayetteville Public Library. And this is the second episode of the Reading Buddy Book Club for June 2022. We are reading Malamander by Thomas Taylor. So, where we left off with Herbie, he has spoken with Mrs. Kraken, and he is going to investigate the room that Violet's parents disappeared from. Before we start reading, grab your reading buddy and make sure that when we're not reading together, if you guys still have any crafts left or coloring pages, feel free to do those while you listen, or you can follow along with me as I read. We are starting with Chapter 6, A Coin for the Mermonkey. When I reach room 407, I'm puffed out, but it doesn't sound like old Mollusk is following me. I turn the key in the lock and push through into the dark beyond. Room 407 is nothing special. It's the cheapest accommodation the hotel provides. Still, the ceilings are high and the furniture has a grandness about it, despite being old. In the single tall window, dark blue velvet curtains hang to the floor, glooming the room. I pull them open and blink in the light. "Let me in, quick," says Violet in a muffled voice. She's crouching on the tiny balcony outside. "Anyone could see me here." I open the window and she darts inside, followed by a hard-as-nails sea wind. "Who?" I say. "Who could see you?" "I don't know," she says, pulling her borrowed coat tight around her and looking fearfully over her shoulder. "Anyone." I walk out onto the balcony and start polishing the rail with my cuff, as though it's my job. A few people hurry against the wind on the cobbles below. The pier, which stretches out into the sea ahead, is empty. The tide is in, pounding the seawall, and the wind moans around the railing and lampposts, carrying with it a hint of fish and chips from Seagull's Diner. A bank of dark clouds towers on the horizon as if it's just waiting for the right moment to dump a mountain of snow on the old town. I nip back inside. "I don't think you were seen," I say, but my words trail off as a low moan reaches us from far away, sharpening to a monstrous shriek that roars around the distant horizon. "What was that?" said Violet. I close the window hurriedly and fasten the catch. "They say it's just the wind." "They say it's just the wind?" said Violet. "Or it is just the wind?" "I prefer to think it's just the wind." I straighten my cap. "Don't you?" But Violet doesn't seem to be listening anymore. She's standing in the middle of the room, looking around in wonder, and then I remember that she's been here before. I was only a baby, yet it feels like... "Like what?" I say. "Oh, nothing." She gives me a sheepish grin. "But this is the closest I've been to Mom and Dad since..." I say. "But that was 12 years ago. I don't know what you're hoping to find in here now." Every time I rehearsed what would happen if I came back to the hotel, Herbie, I imagined there would be luggage, other things that my parents had left, besides me. I imagined there would be clues. Now it looks as if this room might be the only chance to find one. I shrug. Then I get down on the floor and start poking around under the bed. Anything we find here could have been left by any of the guests who have stayed here since, but Violet must know that already, so I don't see any need to point it out. After about 5 minutes of cobwebs and dust, we stop. There's nothing here. For a moment, I wonder if we should climb up and look in the small chandelier, but I already know there's nothing there either. "Did you look in the wardrobe?" I say. "Twice." "Well, we should go then. You'll have to climb back down the fire escape, I'm afraid." "Climb," says Violet, snapping her fingers. "Of course, I didn't look on the wardrobe." She grabs the spindly chair from under the tiny desk and pulls it over to the wardrobe. In a moment, she's teetering on top of it, in her mother's boots, rummaging around in a cloud of dust of her own making. Doesn't anyone ever clean this hotel? There are hundreds of rooms, you know, I say. And anyway, why would anyone clean up there? Because of these, says Violet, and she jumps down from the chair. She's holding a bunch of papers and pieces of cards and things, which she spreads out on the bed. There are several receipts, tags that have been cut off vacation clothes, a foreign coin, 2 playing cards, and... Aha! Cries Violet, snatching something in both hands. It's the size of a postcard and has a line of numbers and letters printed across it. Violet cries, Yes! And holds it up to me. On the back of the card is a drawing of a crooked little monkey, or is it a chimp, in a top hat. A monkey with a fish tail. In a moment, Violet has pulled out the dog-eared card that she keeps on a ribbon around her neck. She holds them both up. They match. The numbers and letters are different, I say, and any one of the guests who have stayed here could have left that card. What? Says Violet, unimpressed. Are you saying it's a coincidence that 2 such freaky postcards happen to be here in the same room at the same time and they're not connected? How can you say that? Unless, she turns to me, unless you know something about these cards. I straighten my cap again and meet her gaze. Almost. Herbie, you do know something, don't you? You recognize these weird monkey cards. Okay, maybe I do, I say, a bit numbly. When were you going to tell me? Violet demands. And I wonder again why I didn't say something when I first saw the card around Violet's neck. Then I remember it was because I didn't want to encourage the whole detective nonsense, that's why. And yet, here I am, the next day, stealing keys and searching for clues, helping a secret girl climb up the fire escape. It's probably about time I just give in and accept that I am on a case now, whether I like it or not. It's a prescription card for the Eerie book dispensary, I say, throwing my hands up in surrender. Most people around here have them. It's really nothing unusual. Nothing unusual? Violet is starting to get cross, I can tell. If it's nothing unusual, why do I have no idea on earth what what did you call it? A prescription card, I say, from the Eerie book dispensary. Why do I have no idea what that even is? You know how people get to see a doctor to get medicine, I say. Well, this is the same thing, only with books. The stories are like medicine, see? But I can tell from Violet's face that she doesn't. You know, I say, scooping up the rubbish from the bed and flicking the coin at Violet, I think it would be best if I took you there to see for yourself. Chapter 7. The Eerie Book Dispensary. It has already started snowing as we head out into the twisting streets of Erie-on-Sea. Only, because this is the seaside in winter, don't go imagining a pretty snow globe flurry. The snow is like a swarm of icy bees, stinging our eyes and trying to get up our noses. Is it always as cold as this? Asks Violet, shouting above the wind. I shrug, though she probably can't tell because of my big coat. And it's not my coat exactly. Like Violet, I've borrowed one from the Lost and Foundry, all signed out and accounted for in the ledger, of course. In each coat pocket, we have a hot pebble from the stack on my stove. It's not fair, I shout back, and we start to climb a narrow lane of steps, heading deeper into the town. Can't see if we're being followed, Violet calls, looking back in this weather. I look back too, and for a moment, it seems as if there is someone there. We both stop, squinting into the snow. Was that a shadow stepping back into a doorway? There are a few people around, scurrying against the wind. It's nothing, I say, almost convincing myself. Mustn't get paranoid. But I can't stop myself from glancing up at the hotel tower, still visible over the rooftops behind us. Does Lady Kraken's camera Luna work by daylight too? We come out onto a square with a bronze dolphin statue in its center. We cross it and find ourselves standing outside a large shop window, bathed in its warm light. Something grotesque leers out at us. It's the mermonkey, looking just as ugly as the drawing on the postcard, sitting on a great peeling circus pedestal and grinning down from behind an ancient black typewriter. It's real, says Violet. Well, I shrug. There's real, and then there's really real, isn't there? The Eerie Book Dispensary, Violet reads the painted letters from the window. Then, before she can say anything, there's a ding, and the door of the shop opens. A tall, handsome man with dark gray speckled hair steps out and pulls his jacket lapels up against the weather. He stops a moment as he sees us, then pauses. He looks as if he's about to say something, and then just gives us a small nod before striding away across the square. Is that the owner? Says Violet. He looks booky. Not exactly, I say. That was Sebastian Eels. You've probably heard of him. He's an author and a bit of a local celebrity. He's a bit full of himself, too, if you ask me. You're not being rude to my customers, are you, Herbie? Says a Scottish voice I know well. A woman with tumbling red hair and a green dress is leaning out the doorway, pulling a shawl around her. Sorry, Miss Hanover. We were just coming to see you, I say, as I notice Violet still staring after Sebastian Eels, with an odd look in her face. Well, come and see me a bit faster, then. And close the door behind you, says Miss Hanover. It's as cold as Neptune out there. Inside the shop, a cheery fire blazes in a black marble fireplace. We shuffle out of our borrowed coats. Oh, it's so cool. So, Herbie Lemon. Has anyone lost something in my dispensary? Or is that perhaps the girl who lost it? Not exactly, I say, holding my hands to the fire. This is Violet. Violet, meet Jenny Hanover. She owns the place. Violet says hello, but she's distracted, gazing around the shop in amazement. I remember how it felt to visit the Eerie Book Dispensary for the first time, and to see the sagging floor-to-ceiling shelves, color-coded and stuffed with all manner of books, seemingly in no order at all. I can remember the book I got, too, but that's another story. Ah, Violet, says Jenny Hanover. I see that Irwin likes you. I look down, and sure enough, the dispensary's cat, Irwin, is curling himself around Violet's legs. Mrs. Hanover scoops him up, a mass of snow-white fur and 2 ice-blue eyes in her arms. A good sign. Cats can always tell. Tell what? Says Violet, stroking the cat's head. But Mrs. Hanover just smiles. Violet's got something to ask you, I say, because the silence is a bit awkward. Or show you, I mean. Oh, yes. Violet reaches into her pullover and pulls the ribbon over her head. This. And she hands over her mermonkey card. So you've been here before, Jenny says, turning the card in her hand. Violet shrugs. Maybe. My dad's a writer, so perhaps you know him. His name is Peter Parma. Peter? Jenny blinks. Wait, your name is Violet Parma. Violet nods. You know me? Know you? Not exactly. But I held you in my arms once, when you were a baby, many years ago. Do you know my parents then? Violet's voice goes higher with excitement. And my mother? You knew my mom? I met her. It's not quite the same thing. Your parents never consulted my mermonkey, as many do, and they went missing soon after. She pulled up the card. This, I presume, is the book prescription they were given. Must be, I say. Can you tell which book it was from the code? From the code? No, not a chance. Mrs. Hanover frowns. The books change positions all the time. As you should know by now, Herbie. Hold on, Violet raises her hand. I don't know how this place works. It looks like a shop, but it sounds as though it's something else. What is it exactly? A library? The world's one and only book dispensary, Mrs. Hanover says, handing the card back. A library will lend you the book you want, while a bookshop sells it for a price. In this place, however, it's the book that chooses you. With Violet still looks unsure. The mermonkey? That's a thing? And she points to the grotesque creature sitting in the window. Viewed from behind, its scaly lower body and hunched hairy back are a disturbing sight. Why not find out for yourself? Replies Jenny Hanover. Chapter 8, in which a book is dispensed. But I don't have any money, says Violet. She's standing in the shop window now, her back to the glass. In front of her, the mermonkey looks down over the top of its typewriter. Its left arm is extended, and in its hand it is clutching a tall, scraggly, moth-chewed top hat, held out as if asking for an offering. You do, I say, remember, from your parents' room in the hotel. Violet puts her hand in her pocket and pulls out a foreign coin she found on top of the wardrobe. It might as well be yours. But how much does it cost? Says Violet. Jenny Hanover smiles. Oh, that depends entirely on you. Some who come here stuff that hat full of cash before the monkey will talk to them, while others have to brush it with their fingertips. Try your coin, Violet. It's the only way to find out. Violet reaches out and drops the coin into the hat. It lands with a soft thud somewhere inside. Nothing happens. But then, before anyone can speak, something does. The mermonkey shudders. There's a wheezing, clicking sound, like rusty gears being driven by a spring, and its left arm lifts up, 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 until it plops the hat down on its head. Then there's a rattle as something, the coin surely, falls down into a hidden mechanism. The creature's eyes light up. There's a bone-jarring scream from somewhere, which makes Violet jump in surprise. Steam, or possibly smoke, curls out from the creature's ears as it rises up on its coiled, iridescent fishtail. The mermonkey curls its other arm till its hand stops, hovering over the typewriter. With a terrible screeching sound, it slowly extends a long, bony index finger. Then it starts to type. What's it doing? Cries Violet over the horrible, shrieking, clacking sounds. But Jenny Hanover just nods towards the typewriter. And then, as suddenly as it started, the mermonkey judders to a halt. Its right hand draws back from the typewriter keys, and the left hand holds the hat out once again. Its eyes wink out, and silence returns to the shop, leaving only a hint of acrid smoke in the air to say that anything happened at all. Then there's a ping from the typewriter, and a card is ejected from it, fluttering down to the floor at Violet's feet. She picks it up. And that, Violet Parma, is your prescription, says Jenny Hanover. It's the book the mermonkey has chosen for you. Not perhaps the book you want, or the book you were expecting, but possibly the book you need. Violet rejoins us. The card in her hand is just like the one around her neck. A drawing of the mermonkey on one side, and a line of letters and numbers on the other. 42EPU78. But what does that mean? She asks. Is it code? Herbie? Jenny looks at me with a twinkling eye. Can you remember how to read the mermonkey? I scratch my head under my cap. I think so. The first number is the floor we should go to. Miss Hanover smiles and indicates the stairs, faintly visible deep inside the shop. Call me if you need help, she says, and turns away to a pile of books waiting to be sorted on a nearby table. Come on, I say to Violet, this way. And the rest of it, says Violet as we reach the 4th floor. We're alone up here, with no sound but the creaking old wood and the wind at the windows. We can see 3 rooms ahead of us, one after the other, all of them as stuffed to the high ceiling with books as the rest of the place. The 2 means the second room, I say, leading the way. And the E, says Violet when we get there. Is it east? It is, I say. And it's easy to orientate in this town. The sea is always the same direction, so this is the east wall. What is the next part of the code? It says PU. PU is for purple, I explain. See, all the shelves are different colors. Purple's the one less than top shelf. I grab a library ladder and hook it to the rail on the ceiling. There you go, Violet. It's your book, so you can have all the fun. Violet climbs. The last part of the code is 78, she calls down. That's the book itself. I call back up. Just count them from left to right. If you get to the end of the shelf before 78, then count back. Okay, says Violet, counting under her breath, tapping each book spine with her fingertip, and then, I think I've got it. Violet slides back down the ladder and lands neatly. In her hand is a slim aqua green hardback book, old-looking and with no dust cover. The title is stamped in faded bronze letters across the cover. It looks as though the last person who read it used a piece of dried seaweed as a bookmark. So this is mine? She asks, clearly still unsure about all of this. My book? In more ways than one, perhaps, says a man's voice, and we nearly jump with fright. A shadow crosses the next room, and Sebastian Eels fills the doorway. He pushes one hand through his thick hair, and a few half-melted snowflakes flutter down. Now that is a very interesting choice. And he takes the book. Malamander. He reads the title aloud. By Captain K. So mysterious, isn't it, when an author tries to hide his real identity? But it seems the mermonkey has chosen to tell you a story about a famous local legend, Violet. The tragic story of old Captain K and his battle with a monster. Violet reaches out and takes the book back, politely but firmly. How do you know my name? So sorry, rude of me. Jenny just told me who you are. Peter Parma's girl. I'm Eels, by the way, Sebastian Eels. And he holds one large slab-like hand out to shake. Violet's hand is engulfed by it. I dabble in a little writing myself. We should be going, I said, heading toward the doorway. There's a pause before Sebastian Eels moves out of the way and allows us through. Of course. Well, goodbye, Violet. If you ever need any help with that book, feel free to get in touch. I'm something of an expert on the legend of the Malamander, and you can often find me here. We are just heading back downstairs when the author calls out, Oh, and I would be especially interested to hear if you catch sight of it yourself. Violet stops and looks back. The Malamander? I thought you said it was legend. Oh, indeed, Sebastian Eels grins, pressing his tongue over his teeth as he does so. But in a place like Eerie on Sea, legends can sometimes have a little more bite. Chapter 9. Coprolites and Cuttlefish. He's just trying to wind you up, I say to Violet as we leave the book dispensary and step back out into the cold. Sebastian Eels likes to have an effect on people. Just ignore him. He gives me the creeps, says Violet. Why did he leave the bookshop and then come back in again? He's a writer, isn't he? Can't stay away, I expect. Well, for some reason, he seems especially interested in my book, says Violet, patting her coat pocket where she'd slipped the slim green volume. We should get back. I turn up my collar. It's getting colder, and I'd like to fire up my stove. I need to open the Lost and Foundry again before Mr. Mollusk gets ideas and decides to board it up for good. I don't want to go back to your cellar, says Violet. Not yet, anyway. I want to look at the sea. Really? I say, glancing up at the slate-gray sky and getting a fat snowflake in my eye. And I want you to tell me about this Malamander thing. Okay, I say, but let's not hang around here. When we reach the seawall, it has at least stopped snowing. We look out over the beach, which has appeared again now that the tide is retreating. To one side, the pier stretches out into the ocean, its iron understructure emerging from the heaving waves. Seagull's Diner is the only point of light to be seen on it. Hungry? I say to Violet. Yes, but now I really don't have any money. My treat, I say. Come on, let's go down to the beach first. I know a shortcut. The narrow stone steps to the shore are wet and slimy with green. When we reach the sand, it's odd to think that just a couple of hours ago, the place we are now standing was over our heads with water. Are you paid then? Are you paid then? Asks Violet as we set off across the wet sand and shingle. For your lost property job? Oh, yes. I straighten my cap, which the wind keeps pushing over one ear. But not in money. Being the lost and founder at the Grand Nautilus is more important than that. I get to keep anything that is not collected. Really? Anything? Yes, well, anything that is not collected after a century. 100 years? Violet looks amazed. I know. At least once a week, something gets signed off the ledger for good. If no one has collected it after a century, they're probably dead and gone, aren't they? We crunch on through the shingle, picking our way over the seaweed piles and sticks of driftwood. Ahead, someone well-wrapped in tatty clothes and scarves is approaching, carrying a metal bucket. On her head is at least 3 hats, all tied down with a piece of string. Hello, someone cries, and I, hello, back. I don't often see you on the beach, young Herbie, says a woman as she draws near. Who's your interesting friend? This is Violet Parma, I say. Violet, this is Mrs. Fossil. She's a beachcomber. Professional beachcomber, if you please, says Mrs. Fossil, giving Violet a snaggletooth grin. The only one in town. And I hope to see you both in my little Flots Emporium in the near future. I have some curious beach finds just in and cleaned up. They would especially suit a young man looking for something for that special someone in his life. Eh, Herbie? Mrs. Fossil nudges me and winks at Violet. Really? Violet looks embarrassed. What kinds of things do you find? Ah, things like this, says Miss Fossil, waving her bucket at Violet. Inside, a dozen strange objects, shells, twists of metal, frosty glass pebbles, and funny spirals slosh around. Mrs. Fossil reaches a fingerless glove into the bucket and pulls out a glistening brown lump. What's that? What's that? Asks Violet, not taking the lump, even though it looks as if Mrs. Fossil is offering it to her. Coprolite, my dear. A lovely specimen, prehistoric. What? Doodah, explains Miss Fossil, with another wink. Dino turd, petrified poo. 135 million years old, give or take a day or two. I'm probably the first person to pick it up since the lower Cretaceous. Imagine that! Violet, whose hand had been hesitating reaching for the brown rock, looks as though she can imagine that only too well, and she thrusts her hand firmly back inside her pocket. Or maybe you prefer some sunglasses, Miss Fossil continues, dipping back into the bucket and pulling out a pair of shades. They've obviously been in the sea a long time, at least if the barnacles on the lenses are anything to go by. Clean up a treat, these will. Not just now, thanks, Mrs. F., I say, pulling Violet away. But we'll come around to your shop sometime soon, I promise. Just see that you do, Miss Fossil calls back as she strikes off across the beach again, back hunched, eyes fixed firmly on the ground. Soon we are approaching the end of the pier that is out of the sea. As it looms over us, dripping from its seaweedy struts, I see the metal spiral staircase that I was looking for, rising from the beach and connecting to an open hatchway in the wooden boards of the pier high above us. It's not exactly a secret way, I say to Violet as I signal for her to go up first, but hardly anyone uses it these days. I don't tell her that another interesting feature of the staircase is that no one can see it from town, not even if they have such a thing as a camera luna to spy with. At the top, we emerge under a little ornate shelter encrusted with Victorian curlicues. From here, we can see along the pier to the glow of warm light that spills from the windows of Seagull's Diner. It's the best fish and chip shop in town, I tell Violet, leading her toward the light. Well, it's the only fish and chip shop in town, but it's still really good. Isn't this a funny place for it? Says Violet, on the pier. It is a bit far from everyone, I suppose, especially if you have to fight a gale force 9 to get here. But people come anyway, and if they want to see Seagull, they have to. What do you mean? Seagull never leaves the pier, ever. He lives here. He's lived here, alone, for years. Chapter 10, Seagull's Diner. I dig my hand into my pocket and scatter its treasures across the table. Seagull gives me one of his sideways eyebrow looks and scratches his stubbly head. Then he turns to Violet. It's always the same with this one. He waves his hand at me. Now he'll tell me these things are valuable. But they are valuable. I poke around in a pile of curios and trinkets. This coin here is solid silver. Ah, but my fried fish is golden, says Seagull. So is this earring, I say back, and I slide it over so we can get a better look. These things are old, Seagull. Some of them really old. They were lost in the hotel more than 100 years ago. Seagull picks up the earring, holds it to the light, and scrutinizes it closely. Then he lets a grin spread across his face and slides it back across the table. He always tells me that too, he says to Violet, and he always convinces me. He scoops up the silver coin and pushes the rest back to me. Fish and chips for two, coming right up. It's hot in Seagull's Diner, but after the cold outside, that's welcome. We've shuffled off our coats and settled down by the window. In fact, the whole place is windows, with the kitchen and island of scrubbed metal in the middle. There are a few locals here, chatting over steaming plates and drinking tea or coffee. You can tell they're locals because they don't flinch like Violet does every time the diner shutters. What's doing that? She says, clutching the table as another rumble of motion passes through the building, making the plates and cups rattle. Waves, I explain. We're on a pier, remember? Aren't you worried it'll collapse or something? I shrug. It's never done that before, and Seagull lives here, in a flat above the diner. He must think it's safe. What's the story with him? Violet hunches forward, so her words won't carry. Seagull, where's he from? I've never actually asked, I say, surprising myself as I realize this. I don't recognize his accent. They say he came here as a young man and saw a mermaid from the end of the pier, heard her sing. No one ever recovers from that. He's been waiting for her to come back ever since. Another legend, says Violet. There seem to be a lot of those around here. Outside, the weather has begun to change. The dark clouds have been replaced by a strange blue-gray light. Through the windows, all details of the sea and the town become fuzzy and indistinct as the wind dies and the sea mist creeps in. Seagull's coming back, I say under my breath. Quick, get your book out. What for? Violet looks confused. You want to find out about Malamander, don't you? Trust me. Leave the book on the table and see what happens. 2 plates of crispy golden fish and chips, Seagull announces, arriving at our table and placing the food under our noses. The salty, vinegary smell of the chips makes it suddenly hard to think straight. Thank you, Mr. Seagull, says Violet, putting her book down in a very obvious place and eating a chip, then another and another. Wow, these are amazing. Ah, Seagull sighs, giving a little bow. Always a pleasure to... And that's when he sees the book. This, he says to Violet, lowering his voice and glancing over his shoulder. You are reading this? Yes, well, sort of. I just got it. I don't really know what it's about. It is about the fish man, says Seagull, whispering low. But it is not something to talk about here. My customers, they get scared. It is not real. That is what I tell people. It is better that way. You make it sound as if you aren't so sure, says Violet, about the Shh! Seagull sits down quickly at the table and nudges it with his fat belly as he does so. Please do not say its name. He picks up the book and pushes it back into Violet's hands before continuing. You are right. I'm not so sure. It is not possible, of course, for there to be a scaly creature that can talk like a man and swim like a fish. Yet I have seen things. On the pier, at night, in the shadows, I have seen things. In my country, we leave gifts for beings like this, for spirits, offerings. At night, when I close up, I too leave gifts. The fried fish that is left over, outside on the pier. In the morning it is gone, and so I have never had any trouble. Seagulls might have something to do with that, I say, and Seagull raised both shoulders in a shrug. I have no trouble from the seagulls either. Maybe it is all the same thing. But what have you seen? Says Violet, breaking off a piece of battered fish. In the shadows. What is this thing supposed to be? But before Seagull can answer, there's a loud creak and a rush of cold air as the door of the diner swings open. A tall, dismal figure stands there. He has a lank, bone-white beard and a long black sailor's coat dripping with water. I slide low in my seat and lean on one hand, hiding my face. Violet sees me, looks over at the newcomer, and shrinks back into her hair. Boat hook man! What are we going to do? The trinkets and other objects from my pocket are still on the table. I push the gold earring over towards Seagull again and hope that the expression on my face speaks clearly enough. Seagull looks from me to Violet. He ignores the earring and gets to his feet. It's good to see you again, sir, Seagull calls over to the boat hook man. Please have a seat with the best sea view. And with that, he steers the awful man away from us and over to the opposite side of the diner. He won't be able to see us from there. Good old Seagull, I whisper and gather up my things. But we should go. No, let's wait, says Violet, popping another chip into her mouth. This might be our best chance to find out just who Boat Hook Man really is. Maybe he's meeting someone here. That's a good plan, or perhaps it would have worked. But just then, something happens that changes everything. Outside, where the sea mist is gathering, someone screams. Chapter 11, The Sighting. Boat Hook Man is the first to his feet, standing so abruptly that his table crashes over. Then he crosses the diner, flings the door open, and lumbers out. The scream comes again. Come on, Violet cries, pulling me out of my chair. Everyone else gets up too, but we're able to hide in the small crowd that rushes out onto the deck of the pier to see what's happened. We lean over the side, our eyes straining in the swirling mist. What's that? Someone shouts. Look there! Down below, where the beach is barely visible, a human shape moves into view, stumbling out of the mist. Boat Hook Man lets out a strange sound, like the moan of a distant wind, and turns, heading straight for the hidden spiral staircase down to the beach. As he goes, he lets his right arm drop to his side, his long, hooked spike dangling like a weapon. What's he going to do? Violet whispers in my ear. But I don't know, do I? I look back down at the figure below, and the figure looks up. I recognize the face immediately. Mrs. Fossil, I shout, waving. Hello, what happened? But Mrs. Fossil seems unable to speak. Her face is contorted with fear or pain, or both. One of her hats has fallen off. We need to get down there, Violet says, and sets off at a run at the same direction as the Boat Hook Man, who has vanished now into the mist. I follow and find myself rattling down the spiral staircase faster than is wise, but I'm more concerned about getting down quickly than I am about not slipping. We jump the last few steps and run back down the beach beneath the dripping pier. Mrs. Fossil! Oh, Herbie, comes a voice. Help me! The sea mist is so thick now that if we didn't have the struts of the pier to follow, we'd struggle to know which way was which. Mrs. Fossil is on her knees in the sand, clutching one arm and sobbing with pain. It hurts, stings. What happened? Violet crouches down beside her. Did you cut yourself? The sleeve of Mrs. Fossil's raincoat is torn to shreds, as are the many layers of clothing below that. There are angry red marks on her skin. It bit me, she cried. I saw it. Oh, Herbie, I saw it. Teeth like needles. It's okay, Mrs. F., I say. We'll get you back to town and call the doctor. I place my shoulder under her arm, and Violet does the same. We manage to raise her to her feet, But I saw it, Mrs. Fossil wails. I saw it. What did you see? Violet says through the grunt of effort. What bit you? The mal. Mrs. Fossil tries to say it, but her teeth seem to be locked together. Then her legs give way, and suddenly we're the only things holding her up. We need, I gasp, to get her off the beach. But I trail off because something is moving ahead, between us and the town, something dark and immense, something that is getting closer. Boathook Man steps out of the mist, his eyes locked to Violet. He raises his hook and points it at her. His mouth opens, a black cavern in his scraggy beard, and he bellows in a voice like a distant gale. I find you. Please, says Violet, we need help. We need to get this lady to a doctor. Boathook Man doesn't seem to hear. He stomps forward and with one good hand grabs Violet by her collar, lifting her in the air. You cannot stop us, he gasps. I will be free. Hey, I shout, staggering now under the unshared weight of Mrs. Fossil. Leave her alone. But there's nothing I can do. Mrs. Fossil is passing out, taking me down with her. Then there's a slap from behind us, muffled by the mist, but quite definitely a slap. It sounds like something large and flippery hitting the wet sand. Then it comes again. We all turn, even Boathook Man. Something is in the mist, in the direction of the sea, too far away to be clear. It's a crouching figure hunched low near the water, as if poised, waiting to spring. But there's something funny about it, something odd about the length of its arms, something fish-like and spiny that keeps this from being someone at all, and more like a something. Where its eyes should be, there are two enormous, pale reflectors. They blink twice. Then it moves, darting from its crouch and springing along the murky foreshore at great speed, its feet flap, flap, flapping as it vanishes into a swirl of mist. Boathook Man drops Violet, his eyes wide, his mouth drawn back to bare his teeth. He sets off at a lumbering run, vanishing into the mist after the strange creature. Are you okay? I ask Violet, struggling to my feet and extending my hand to pull her up. Mrs. Fossil is sprawled at our feet, out cold. I think so, Violet croaks, clutching her throat. More figures emerge from the mist now, this time from the direction of the pier and the town. She's here, over here. It's Seagull. He reaches our side with several of the other customers from the diner. With a heave, 4 of them manage to lift Mrs. Fossil, and they set off up the beach toward the town. I will telephone the doctor, Seagull calls back at us, jogging off toward the pier. You should follow the others. Yeah, I say, fishing my lost and founder's cap out from a pool of seawater and wringing it out. We should get out of here. Wait a minute, said Violet. What just happened? Herbie, what was that we saw by the water? You wanted to know about the Malamander, didn't you? I replied. Well, I'd say Eerie on Sea has just obliged you with your very own sighting. But it can't be real, Violet shakes her head. How can it be? Do you see that? I say, pointing at the mist. What? Exactly, Violet. In this fog, anything could be standing 10 paces away right now, and we wouldn't know. We need to get off the beach. It's dangerous here. Okay, said Violet. Maybe you're right, but there's something we need to do first. And she heads off into the mist, where Mrs. Fossil's footprints are still faintly visible in the waterlogged sand. What are you doing? I say, trying to catch up. This is madness. What do we need to find? That, Violet cried, pointing ahead. Something is lying on the beach, on the edge of visibility. Violet jogs over to it and picks it up. It's Mrs. Fossil's bucket, her beachcombing treasures spread out around it. From where I'm standing, Violet is half vanished in the mist. I see her silhouette as she stoops to scoop the spilled things back into the bucket. And then I see something else. A shape. No, the shape. The strange, crouching, spiny shape from a moment ago, faint but massive, in the mist beyond Violet. and it's getting closer, making a throaty, clicking, burbling sound as it does. Violet, behind you! This time, she doesn't hesitate. It must be the panicky, high-pitched squeak in my voice, which, for once, is actually quite useful. Then, we are both running up the beach, not looking back, running and running until we reach the top of the steps in the seawall, and we can see the town and the cheery lights and the door of the Grand Nautilus Hotel. Chapter 12, Exotic Erratics. When I get back to my cubbyhole, Mr. Mollusk is standing there. Where have you, he begins. Then he notices the too big borrowed coat, my seaweedy trousers, and the fact that my lost and founder's cap is a soggy mess on my head. And I'm still carrying Mrs. Fossil's bucket of stinking beach findings, which is dribbling a trail of seawater on the polished marble floor behind me. The veins in his temples start to throb. What? How and why? Have you lost a question, sir? I say, sliding past him. I flip the sign on my counter from closed to please ring for assistance. I'll just pop downstairs to see if someone has handed one in. Then I descend to my cellar, leaving the hotel manager spluttering behind me. Violet has already climbed in through the window and is sitting in my big armchair. What just happened, Herbie? She says. I scratch my head. As is often the case in Eerie on Sea, that's not a question that's easy to answer. I take my coat off and drape it over a chair beside my stove. Fortunately, a small glow is still winking at us in the stove window. First thing is to get warm and dry, I say, chucking in a couple of logs. The legends and monsters can wait. I don't believe in the Malamander, says Violet. I don't know what we saw just now, but I'm not ready to believe in sea monsters. Yet, what did we see? I wring out my cap into Mrs. F's bucket. We saw a shadow in the mist, that's all, and Boathook Man attacked you. Violet shudders. Do you think he attacked poor Miss Fossil, too? He looks as if he's capable of anything, I say. But one thing is sure, he seems to have a thing about you. And what did he mean by, I will be free? Violet pulled a blanket over the chair and wraps herself in it, staring into the window of the wood burner, where a new flame is just flickering to life. Violet, I say, because her silence seems a bit odd. Surely you must have some idea why he's chasing you. What did you do? She shrugs. I just bumped into him. Yesterday when I arrived in town, that's all. Can that really be all? But with someone as freaky as Boathook Man, maybe there are no good reasons for anything. Violet is watching me from under the blanket. I came here to find my parents, Herbie, she said. But I seem to have found a different mystery instead. I rummage around in my clothes box until I find another lost and founder's cap. Unless the two mysteries are connected somehow, I say. Violet frowns at me. How can they be connected? I'm about to reply, of course they must be connected, when there's a sharp, scratchy sound on the window. We both turn. Something white is pawing at the glass. It's only Irwin, I say, getting up to let the cat in. He often visits, especially if he's caught in bad weather. The cat from the eerie book dispensary? Says Violet. Irwin hears her voice and pads over to her. He lets her stroke him for a moment before jumping up onto a shelf above the wood burner, settling down in a pile of lost scarves. Where I got the book, Violet continues, as if to herself. Where I got the book about the Malamander. I only went there because of the card around my neck, the card from my parents that came from the dispensary. Oh, Herbie, maybe these things are connected. Violet reaches to her drying coat and fishes the slim green book out of her pocket. But how? The best way to find out what's in a book is to read it, says Irwin. She hasn't had a chance yet, I reply absent-mindedly, brushing the last of the sand from my trousers. But you have time now, Vi. I need to get some work done, or Mollusk will have me stewed and served up as today's special. I'll be back soon, though, to see what you found out. Violet is holding the book to her face, her wide eyes staring over at Irwin. That cat just spoke! I glance sharply at Erwin. He peers back through the narrow blue eyes as if challenging me. I gave an awkward shrug. Maybe your ears are just full of sea mist, I managed to say. Everyone knows cats can't talk. And I give Erwin a hard stare, which he ignores as he purrs down to sleep. Anyway, now would be a good time to read your book by, I say as I head upstairs, and when I get back, maybe you'll have some answers. Back up in my cubbyhole, I look both ways to make sure there's no sign of Mr. Mollusk in reception. When I see that there isn't, I stroll over to Ambergris again. And again, she watches my approach over her spectacles. Herbie, she says, if you're going to tell me you've seen a croissant thief again, no, I say, not a sign, but I'll keep my eyes open, I promise. What have you done to get Mr. Mollusk so worked up today? Said Amber. He is fuming. I'm just returning these. I put the keys to room 407 on the counter. They were lost, and I found them. It's my job, after all. I don't know what old Mollusk Breath is on about. Now, says Amber, suppressing a laugh as she takes the keys, and she adds, I wonder how these got lost. I give her one of my most innocent faces. Who knows? Anyway, as part of my official duties as lost and founder, I need to look at the booking records, I say, adjusting my cap and trying to look important. I need to trace some guests. I see. Amber raises one eyebrow. Do you know which room they stayed in? Room 407, as it happens, I reply, checking my fingernails. Really? The eyebrow creeps even higher. What a coincidence. Amber takes a large volume down from the shelf behind her and opens it on the counter. They stayed here 12 years ago, I say. Maybe it would be better if I had a look. Amber stops flicking pages and gives me another over-the-spectacle glance. Then she turns the book around and pushes it over. It takes only a moment to find the entry for Violet's missing parents, marked with a single word, Parma. Violet's dad's name was Peter Parma, but Violet seems to know nothing at all about her mom. Not even her name. Is there some other way to find out more? I ask Amber. People don't need to give their shoe size to book a room here, Herbie, she replies. But what about this phone number? I say, tapping a column on the opposite page. We always take a phone number for every booking. This looks like a London number. Why, Amber, it's really vitally important that I use the hotel telephone. Ambergris puts her hands on her hips. Can you look me in the eye, Herbie Lemon, and swear that you're not doing anything else to annoy Mr. Mollusk? I put my hand over my heart. Amber, I swear to you on my honor as lost and founder that I will never, ever pass up the chance to annoy that whiny old whinge-bag mollusk. And I think you already know that. Amber laughs and points to the old black and brass telephone. Just one call. I'll keep a lookout for the whinge-bag. I pick up the heavy receiver and dial the number from the booking record. I hear the purr of the phone ringing, and then a voice answers. Exotic Erratics, what name, please? I say, because I wasn't exactly expecting an answer, let alone one as strange as this. Oh, good morning, says a voice, sounding slightly more formal now. You're through to the Natural History Museum, Department of Cryptozoology and Exotic Erratics. How may I help you? My name is Herbert Lemon, I say slowly, putting on the posh voice because, well, Natural History Museum. I'm the lost and founder at the Grand Nautilus Hotel, and I'm calling because I believe you have lost something? Or rather, someone? Who is this? The voice sounds annoyed now. How did you get this number? This would have been 12 years ago, I continue, before they can hang up. Did someone in your department go missing? I hear a faint intake of breath on the other end of the line. Then the voice tells me a name. And that is where we are going to stop today. Things are getting kind of crazy. I'm excited to keep reading this with you guys, and I will have a new video up in a couple of days. In the meantime, keep reading with your buddy, and I will see you guys in the next Malamander episode. Bye!